He was a billionaire father drowning in grief, raising a son who hadn't spoken since the tragedy that shattered their world. But one ordinary afternoon at a diner, a young black waitress knelt beside his disabled son, let him lead a single dance step, and in that moment, everything changed. What she awakened in them will leave you speechless. This is one story you don't want to miss. Please, before you watch this video, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Bless your soul as you do. The Whitaker estate sat high on a snow-covered hill just outside of Denver, Colorado. From the outside, it looked like a dream. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls, heated marble floors, and a garage full of foreign cars. But inside, the silence was deafening. Graham Whitaker, tech billionaire and founder of one of the most successful cybersecurity firms in America, sat alone at the breakfast table. His eyes stared blankly into his untouched coffee. The only other soul in the room was his 10-year-old son, Tyler, strapped quietly in his wheelchair with a blanket tucked neatly around his legs. Tyler had cerebral palsy. He couldn't walk, couldn't speak. His movements were limited to slight turns of the head and soft gestures with his left hand. Despite constant therapy and top-tier medical care, he had never said a single word. Graham loved him, but he didn't know how to reach him. His wife, Jenna, had been the glue, the heart. But cancer took her 2 years ago, and since then, everything had drifted apart. Now Graham lived through routines, business meetings, charity checks, scheduled therapy appointments. He gave his staff instructions. He nodded when Tyler's nurse reported progress, but he never lingered long enough to experience any of it. His life, once filled with innovation and ambition, had collapsed into a sterile, hollow shell. That morning, his assistant Cheryl called him. "Sir, the event tonight, remember? The Children with Courage Gala? You promised to attend." "I'll send a donation," Graham replied, already half distracted by an email from his board. "You already did, but they were hoping you and Tyler could make an appearance. It's not just for press. It's a community event, a small one. Might do you both some good." He almost said no, but then he looked across the table at his son, who was staring out the window. The boy's eyes had always been bright, intelligent, like he was trapped inside his own body. Graham's throat tightened. "All right," he said quietly. "Put it on the schedule." That evening, Graham dressed plainly. No designer suits, no flash, just a charcoal coat and his old Yankees cap. Tyler wore a navy hoodie and mittens, a knit beanie pulled over his ears. They arrived at Harlan Hall, a modest community center near downtown. It was nothing like the charity galas Graham was used to. No chandeliers or valet service, just paper streamers, folding chairs, and the smell of potluck casseroles. Children in wheelchairs, walkers and leg braces moved about joyfully. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker. Graham pushed Tyler's wheelchair slowly through the doors, unsure of how long they'd stay. People barely noticed them, and for once, Graham liked that. Then he saw her, a young waitress with deep brown skin, a yellow headband tied above her curls, and a smile so warm it seemed to cut through the winter air. She was dancing as she carried a tray of drinks, her body swaying to the music, effortlessly joyful. She didn't notice them yet, but something told Graham she would. Aaliyah Jenkins moved like music lived inside her. Even with a tray of soda cups balanced on one hand and a tight schedule to keep, she twirled between tables with a natural rhythm. She wasn't being paid much to waitress that night at Harlan Hall, but Aaliyah never showed up just for the paycheck. She showed up for the kids, their laughter, their strength, their light. At 26, Aaliyah had faced more than her share of setbacks. She'd raised her younger sister Mia since she was 15 after their mom passed from a stroke. Every week was a dance between work at the senior care home and side gigs like this one, just to keep their apartment warm and their fridge full. But no matter how tired she was, she never lost her smile. That's why people at the center loved her. She wasn't just a waitress, she was a spark. When she danced while serving snacks, the kids smiled wider. When she knelt to talk eye level to a child in a wheelchair, they felt seen, not pitied, not ignored, seen. And tonight, as she set down a tray, her eyes caught a boy near the back of the room. His face was small, pale and still. His body seemed stiff in the wheelchair, a knitted hat pulled over his ears. His father stood behind him like a statue, arms folded, eyes full of weight. Something about the boy pulled at her. "Be right back," she said softly to her coworker and made her way over. As she knelt beside the wheelchair, she gave a warm smile. "Hey there," she said gently. "I'm Aaliyah. I like your hoodie. You must be the cool guy in the room." The boy didn't move, just blinked. "That's okay," she said unfazed. "Blink once for yes, twice for no. Let's make that our thing." The boy blinked once. Aaliyah's smile grew. "You are the cool guy. I knew it." Graham, who stood a few feet away, watched the exchange with quiet interest. People usually avoided Tyler. Some were polite, others visibly uncomfortable. But this young woman? She just knelt down and talked to him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like his wheelchair wasn't the first thing she saw. Tyler blinked again. "You want to hear a secret?" Aaliyah leaned in. "I get nervous at parties too, especially ones with this much Jell-O salad. You and me, we're the quiet, cool types, right?" Another blink. Graham's jaw tensed. His son was responding. Actually responding. Then the music changed. A soft, happy tune played through the speaker, a mix of jazz and blues with a steady beat. Aaliyah stood, swaying a little. "This is my jam," she said playfully. Then she looked at Tyler. "Want to show me a move?" Tyler hesitated. She didn't push, just held out her hand. To Graham's stunned disbelief, Tyler blinked once. Yes. Aaliyah gently placed her hand over his, guiding it side to side with the rhythm. The boy's fingers twitched and his head tilted just enough to show he was following. It wasn't a dance. Not really. But to Graham, it felt like the first miracle in 10 years. The room didn't go silent, but for Graham, it felt like the world had paused. Tyler's hand was moving. Slowly, gently, but it was moving. With Aaliyah's guidance, he swayed his fingers to the beat. Just a slight left-right motion. But it was deliberate, intentional. Music pulsed softly through the room, but in Graham's chest, something thundered. His heart. For years, therapists had tried everything. Flashcards, songs, sensory tools, to get Tyler to engage. Sometimes he blinked. Occasionally he grunted. But this, he was moving to the rhythm, responding. Graham stepped a little closer, drawn by the magnetic force of the moment. He didn't want to ruin it, but he had to be near it. Tyler noticed because for the first time that night, he looked up, right at his father. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, unspoken but powerful. Aaliyah noticed too. She crouched again, still moving Tyler's hand with hers. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. "Look who's watching you. He's proud of you. Can you feel it?" Tyler didn't blink this time. He just smiled. It was faint, barely there, but unmistakable. Graham's eyes widened. He hadn't seen his son smile since Jenna's funeral. Not once. The music continued, and Aaliyah gently let go of Tyler's hand, allowing him to guide the motion now. His movements were small and shaky, but they carried more joy than anything Graham had seen in years. Then one of the kids from across the room, a little girl with crutches and a glittery pink dress, called out, "He's dancing! Look!" Others turned, and for once, instead of shying away, Tyler stayed with it. Aaliyah gave a tiny clap. "You're a natural, my friend. You've got rhythm." Graham finally spoke, his voice thick. "How did you—" Aaliyah stood, a bit surprised to be addressed. "Sometimes you just have to ask differently," she said simply. "Kids like Tyler, they hear everything. They just need someone who listens back." Graham nodded, barely holding back the emotion rising in his chest. He's never done that before." Aaliyah looked back at Tyler, who was still lightly moving his hand, riding the tail end of the song. Maybe he was waiting for the right song, or the right moment. Someone tapped a microphone at the front of the room and began announcing the raffle winners. The moment passed, but its echo lingered. Graham gently placed a hand on Tyler's shoulder. "You did great, son." Tyler leaned into his father's touch, ever so slightly. Aaliyah started to move away, returning to her tray, but Graham stopped her. Jenkins, was it? She smiled. Just Alia. He nodded. Thank you. For tonight. For whatever that was. She tilted her head. It was connection, Mr. Whitaker. That's all it ever is. Graham stood still as she walked away, her yellow headband bouncing with each step. In that crowded, noisy community center, a billionaire and his silent son had finally spoken, and neither had said a word. The gala wound down as the evening air turned colder outside Harlan Hall. Folding chairs were stacked. Volunteers wiped down tables. Laughter still echoed, but it was growing softer, settling into memory. Graham wheeled Tyler toward the exit, unsure what to say. The night had shifted something deep in him, like a door opening after years of being shut. And it wasn't just Tyler who changed. He had changed. Wasn't expecting that, he muttered more to himself than to anyone else. Tyler turned his head slightly as if to acknowledge him. Graham blinked hard. Just that tiny gesture felt like a conversation. Sir? Graham turned to see Aaliyah holding a Tupperware container, her coat over one arm. Someone made too much mac and cheese, she said with a grin. And I know fancy billionaires like you probably eat stuff I can't pronounce. But this is homemade gold. Graham chuckled, surprised at her boldness. No one ever talked to him like that. Not since Jenna. We actually like mac and cheese. Good, she said, handing it to him. Tell Tyler it tastes better if you eat it while watching cartoons. He smiled and accepted the container. You always dance when you work? She shrugged. When the music's good and the room needs some joy. Yeah, I figure if life won't give you a reason to dance, you make your own. Graham looked at her thoughtfully. You know, that's something my wife used to say. Elia's eyes softened. She sounds like someone I would have liked. She was light. The kind of light that makes you think everything will be okay. He paused. She passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry, Aaliyah said gently. Graham nodded. Tyler's been different since. Quiet, distant. I've tried everything. Therapists, speech devices, top doctors. But tonight, you reached him in a way no one else has. Aaliyah shifted her weight and looked at Tyler. I didn't do anything magic. I just saw him. That's what people need most, to be seen. A moment passed before Graham asked, Do you ever do private sessions? Maybe spend some time with Tyler? Aaliyah blinked, surprised. You mean like a babysitter? Number more like a companion, a friend. He glanced at Tyler. Someone who knows how to pull the music out of him. Aaliyah hesitated. She had a full-time job at the senior care home, plus evening shifts when she could get them. Money was tight, time even tighter. But something in Tyler's eyes tugged at her, and something in Graham's voice told her this wasn't a business offer. It was a plea from a father who was trying. I can come by Tuesdays and Thursdays, she finally said. Afternoons work best. Graham extended his hand. Deal. She shook it. Just don't expect miracles. He looked down at Tyler, who gave a single blink. I already got one, Graham whispered. As they parted ways that night, the Denver sky above shimmered with stars. A billionaire, a waitress, and a boy who had finally danced were about to write a new chapter. One with music, movement, and maybe healing. It started quietly. No grand fanfare. Just a knock at the Whitaker estate gate every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m., followed by the slow roll of Aaliyah's beat-up silver hatchback up the long driveway. The house looked like something out of a magazine. Tall windows, polished marble floors, an elevator. A piano no one touched. But to Aaliyah, it was just another house filled with silence. Until she got to Tyler's room. His space was surprisingly simple. No clutter, no mess. Just soft colors, a bookshelf full of unopened novels, and a window that faced the garden. Tyler sat by it, same as always, still and quiet. But when Aaliyah entered, things shifted. Afternoon, boss, she'd say cheerfully, plopping down a Bluetooth speaker. I brought your prescription, 3 doses of Motown and a splash of Stevie Wonder. She never treated it like therapy. She treated it like life. The first few visits were just about rhythm. Aaliyah tapping her fingers on a table, guiding Tyler's hand to mimic it. Then it became clapping, then light swaying. One day she laid a scarf over his lap and danced it across his knees like waves. Tyler followed the movement with his eyes focused and sharp. By the third week, he was smiling more often. One Thursday, as the sun poured golden light through the window, she brought out something new, a pair of custom-made maracas, lightweight, easy to grip. "Okay, I had to trade my lunch money for these," she joked, placing one in his hand. "So make it worth it." She queued up some old-school funk and began shaking hers. Tyler stared, unsure. But when she guided his hand, he followed, making a soft, rhythmic sound. It wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. "That's it," she cheered. "That's your groove." From the hallway, Graham watched silently. At first, he'd resisted intruding. He told himself he hired her to help Tyler, not him. But each time he passed by the room and saw his son smiling, participating, living, it stirred something in his chest he thought had died with Jenna. One day, Aaliyah turned and saw him standing there. "You can come in, you know," she said without missing a beat. "He's your dance partner, too." Graham smiled awkwardly, stepping in. "I'm more of a wallflower." Tyler blinked once. "Yes." Aaliyah laughed. "See? Even he knows you need to loosen up." They spent the next 10 minutes jamming with maracas and hand claps. Graham was stiff at first, but Tyler's soft giggle, yes, a real one, made him laugh too. Afterward, they all sat quietly, breathing in the peace of the moment. "You ever wonder why he responds to you?" Graham asked. Aaliyah looked over at Tyler. "Because I never expect him to be anything other than himself." That night, after Aaliyah left, Graham sat beside Tyler's bed. He took his hand, not to help him or guide him, just to hold it. "I see you now," he said softly. "I promise, I see you." And for the first time, Tyler squeezed back. The weather had changed overnight. Clouds gathered over Denver like bruises, and by mid-morning, rain was falling in sheets. Thunder rolled across the city. The Whitaker estate, usually filled with soft light through towering windows, now sat dim and brooding. Aaliyah arrived late that Thursday, soaked despite her umbrella, her boots squeaking against the marble floor. "Sorry, traffic was a mess," she said, shaking out her coat at the door. "It's a soup kind of day." Graham greeted her with a rare smile. "I'll have Chef Mateo whip something up." She grinned. "Tell Chef Mateo he's got competition." "I brought my mama's gumbo in a thermos." They walked together down the hallway toward Tyler's room. The storm outside seemed to echo through the walls, but the moment they stepped inside, it was like entering a different world. Tyler sat in his usual place by the window, the raindrops tapping against the glass. His maracas sat in his lap. He didn't look up right away, but when Aaliyah greeted him with her usual sing-song, "Afternoon Superstar," he gave a small smile. Today, Aaliyah didn't play music right away. Instead, she sat beside him and pulled out a book. "I thought maybe we could try something new," she said. "It's not dancing, but it's a kind of rhythm, too." Words, she began reading Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein, her voice playful, animated. To her surprise, Tyler leaned in. Graham peeked from the door again, marveling. Aaliyah's presence had become like oxygen in the house, unassuming, essential. And Tyler, he wasn't just smiling anymore. He was engaging, connecting, blooming. Halfway through the poem about a crocodile who wore a coat and boots, Aaliyah noticed something. Tyler's lips were moving, very slightly. She stopped reading. "Tyler?" He looked startled, as if caught mid-secret. "Were you trying to say something?" Graham came into the room now, his heart racing. Tyler stared at them both. Then in a whisper, raspy, weak, but audible, he said, "Again." The room went still. Aaliyah blinked. "You want me to read it again?" Tyler gave a tiny nod. Graham sat down, speechless. He hadn't heard his son speak since the funeral. Not a sound. But now on a rainy afternoon, with no doctors, no devices, just rhythm and poetry, his boy had found a voice. Aaliyah wiped a tear from her cheek. "You got it, boss." She began again, and this time Graham joined in. They read together, laughing in between lines, watching Tyler's eyes brighten with every silly rhyme. Later, when the thunder quieted and the sun peeked out, Aaliyah packed up to leave. Graham walked her to the door. "You changed his world," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, Graham. Tyler changed his world. I just reminded him it was still his to shape. As she stepped back into the drizzle, Graham stood in the doorway a moment longer. He realized something important. The storm outside had passed, and so had the one inside. Spring came early that year, painting Denver in bright greens and soft blues. The air felt lighter. Birds returned to the trees lining the Whitaker estate, and laughter, real, spontaneous laughter, began to echo through its once solemn halls. Tyler was changing, growing. He still used his wheelchair, still struggled with speech, but now he hummed softly during Aaliyah's visits. He reached for her hand first. He learned to tap rhythms on the table, in patterns only he understood. He smiled with his eyes and, on the most beautiful days, his mouth. And he talked. Not full conversations, not yet, but enough to make Graham believe in miracles again. "Hi, Aaliyah," Tyler would whisper when she walked in, the words slow but clear. Every time it brought tears to her eyes. Graham transformed too. He worked less, smiled more. The ever-present phone disappeared during their sessions. He no longer stood behind glass, watching from a distance. He joined them. He clapped offbeat, told dad jokes that made Aaliyah groan, and even tried dancing once. Tyler found that particularly hilarious. One Sunday afternoon, Graham invited Aaliyah to stay for dinner, not just as Tyler's helper, but as a guest. "I hope you like lasagna," he said. "Only if it's better than my mom's," Aaliyah teased. Dinner turned into long conversation. Conversation turned into stories. Graham talked about his late wife, how she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. Aaliyah shared how her dad taught her to dance by standing on his feet when she was 5. Tyler just listened, giggling now and then, like he belonged to both their memories. As the sun set, casting golden streaks across the dining room, Graham looked at Aaliyah and said, "You know, this house hasn't felt like a home in a long time. Until you." Aaliyah looked away, touched. "I didn't do anything special. You showed up. You cared. That's more than most ever do." Then, as if he'd been waiting for the perfect moment, Graham turned to Tyler and said, "You ready?" Tyler blinked and nodded. Aaliyah looked confused. "Ready for what?" Graham stood and reached into the cabinet behind him, pulling out a small speaker. He clicked a button. Music filled the room. It was slow, sweet, familiar. Sam Cooke. "Nothing can change this love." "I found a video," Graham said, "of Jenna dancing with Tyler. He was maybe 4. This was their song." He wheeled Tyler beside Aaliyah and extended his hand to her. "He wants to dance with you." Aaliyah's breath caught. Tyler looked up, smiling. She took his hands and began to sway, gently, carefully, but fully present. Graham watched, his heart full. The boy who once sat silent in shadows was now gliding, smiling, shining, living, with a woman who refused to see his limits. As the song ended, Tyler spoke, clearer than ever. "Thank you, Aaliyah." She knelt beside him, tears on her cheeks. "No, Tyler." "Thank you." Graham stepped closer, placing a hand on both their shoulders. This was the dance I didn't know I'd been waiting for. And under that golden light, with love in the air and music in their hearts, a billionaire, his son, and a waitress who taught them how to live again, finally felt whole. The first dance had become a new beginning, and none of them would ever forget it. What started as a simple act of kindness from a waitress turned into the healing of a broken family. Aaliyah didn't just teach Tyler to dance. She helped him rediscover his voice and helped Graham rediscover his heart. In a world that often overlooks those with disabilities, this story reminds us that love, patience, and human connection can change lives. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories. Thanks for watching.